Post. Is Paul Ryan's departure a disaster for the House Republicans? That's from NBC News. The future of the GOP without Paul Ryan, NPR. Yeah, it's one of those stories. Paul Ryan's been leading the People's House for 3 years now. It was a job that he never wanted. He actually escaped D.C. to try to avoid even getting the pitch. I think I can't think of a more miserable job actually than trying to control those 434 members in the House. Well, he's the fifth one. Oh. I don't think Paul Ryan's done a bad job. I'm not saying I'm going to put him up there with some of the best speakers of all time, but
he's no John Boehner. I mean,
yeah, but he's no John Boehner. Look, there's dissent within the party right now. The Republican Party is trying to define itself, guys, and it is somewhat, and I say this in a loving way, it is a little bit of a rudderless ship. You have a lot of members that are trying to capitulate to the opposition, call that triangulation, use whatever term you want. You have the Freedom Caucus that came out of the Tea Party movement that's trying to stick more to conservative ideals. I'm not sure that I would necessarily put all that at the feet of the speaker. I think it's a larger issue. It's, again, the speaker is the person that the American people are familiar with, and that's the face of the House. But I think there's a larger conversation going on here.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at it is, just like in many ways the country is kind of doing a lot of soul searching these days, I think the Republican Party even more so in that sense. And Ryan's wing of the party, if you want to call it that, his faction is not on the ascendant right now. Right. And you kind of see that. You see that the president side, the populist side, the Tea Party side is really the side that people stuck with. That was the side that won elections. That was the side that is starting more and more to get into the driver's seat. Now, electorally, that might not go well in November, right, as the Republicans start to sort of go through this this pruning, this sort of shearing off process, if you will, of we're probably going to see a hit. I foresee the Republicans taking a hit in November, this November coming up, at least in the House, not so much for the Senate, but I think that in the end, it's going to be a party that's more in line with where the voters are right now, rather than with some of the stuff that they tried in the past.
But it's not because of Donald Trump, and that's the way the media is framing this. Is that
this has been going on for a long time?
Yeah, is that you're seeing a breakdown within the Republican Party because of the disaster that is Donald Trump, and I'm not exactly sure why Donald Trump is such a disaster.
Yeah, and I think both parties are seeing a lot of adjustment and flux. Okay, if you look at, I predicted that no matter what happened November 2016, we would see a different Republican Party come out of that, and I think we have, and it's still trying to find out where it is, what it is.
Yeah, they're becoming liberals. I mean, you're seeing it nationally, you're seeing it at the local level. I mean, there's too much.
In some ways.
Big time. You look here, you have a Republican governor who's talking about signing off on free college for everybody, Larry Hogan, that's looking at more draconian gun legislation. I mean, and you're seeing this nationally, you're seeing it at the local level, where I think, guys, the party is trying to redefine itself. What is conservatism? What does it mean to be a Republican? What is negative liberty? What do any of these things mean? And I think the party is having a real hard time articulating it.
Well, I think what the party is having a tough time in doing is finally recognizing that if you lead with some conservative principles, you actually that's a winning strategy. Okay, you've got a lot of people who are rhinos and who are willing to capitulate, that are still suffering from some PTSD. After November of 2016, I think it's okay to come out and say, hey, you know what? Immigration is fine as long as it's legal. It's okay now to come out and say, we want to cherish our Second Amendment rights. So these things obviously have won an election big time. And I think a lot of the weaker Republicans are having some consternation about it.
And Jack, this is significant because there's an ebb and flow when it comes to who controls Congress in midterm elections. It normally pendulums back and forth. So just you look at history, it's very possible and even probable that the Democrats take over the House. That would not be surprising to anybody.
Well, here's one thing electorally that's sort of been my working theory for a lot of this is Barack Obama's voters, right? The voting bloc that really put him into office are very much like Trump voters in the sense that they vote for their guy. Right. When their guy's on the ballot, that's when they come out to vote. A lot of those.
Are you talking about the Obama voters in 8 or 12?
Both.
Because there's a big difference. Because you didn't have George Bush to kick around in 12.
True, but I kind of mean the voters that identify themselves as I'm an Obama guy or I'm a Trump guy.
Right.
So they came out when their guy was on the ballot. They did not come out when they weren't, even though they were the president in power. So, and you saw Barack Obama in 2010, and in 2014, he would go stand next to someone and campaign for them and say, vote for this guy or vote for this gal, vote for them, vote for them, vote for them, and they just didn't come out. They didn't do it.
Well, now how about you take that to the polar opposite, where we have a Republican governor that on election day, forget aligning himself with the president and the nominees, boycotting the convention, he's saying he's going to vote for his father on election day.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the breakdown that you're seeing within the party right now. Tyrone, to your point, running with conservative principles has always been a winning strategy as far as winning elections. Now, a lot of times the candidates abandon those principles once they get in office. We've talked about this many, many times. Greatest example would be Ronald Reagan in 80 and 84. It was landslide elections that really in 80 nobody was expecting. Now, Reagan, for the most part, stuck to those principles, but now you have candidates run for public office on conservatism and then abandon it and start capitulating, triangulating, however you want to qualify.
Well,
that.
Ronald Reagan, the funny thing is, the establishment hated Ronald Reagan during the time, and it's weird how they lionize him now. They act like he was the bannerman of conservatism, and yet no, he had to fight against them. Look at 1976. Look at everything that happened with cramming Gerald Ford down when Reagan had so much support on his own just because of his message and the power of that. And it's so interesting to see how, in many ways, Reagan's elections were done in spite of what the establishment wanted, and then he had to teach them how to win elections. But instead, we didn't go down that road. We decided we'd go more down the Bush, conservative,
such a great point,
establishment types.
Because Reagan really started to make a name for himself, not as a candidate, but when he was stumping for
Right,
Goldwater back in '64 in the infamous Time for Choosing speech.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't like Reagan and his philosophy caught everybody off guard in the '80s. I mean, you saw where that was going, and it shows how the establishment, for the most part, they're really not conservatives.
You mean kind of like how President Trump was out speaking during the Tea Party? See, this is what my book is about.
Can we do a book signing with you at Brand Circuses?
Let's do it.
Okay, we'll get not being that serious. We'll get on the books. Let me know, when it works. We'll get that coordinated this week. All right. Let's go to the phones. Kick it off with Will in Baltimore. Will, thank you for holding. Good evening. How you doing?
Stick to your flying, Jimmy. Don't waste your time with skiing. That's a dead end. I wish I knew that Tyrone was going up to Pennsylvania 3 weeks ago. I could have used a couple of 30-round magazines.
Yeah, I'm going. I make frequent trips. Will.
I need the translucent ones with flat dark earth at the bottom and the follower too. And I would recommend anybody build an extra upper with a 300 blackout on there. A little more knockdown power. Same magazine, same bulk. Anyway,
Good man.
About this no-knock raid, was that ever done to any one of these Wall Streeters that ripped us off for $1 trillion? And they got the TARP money, 25, 50, 100 billion, and they kicked back 20 billion so that Barry Obama and the DOJ could run these slush funds, these mega slugs. And you know what? The FBI already was in those computers, so that lawyer, just like they were in Cheryl Atkinson's computer. They already were in those computers. They knew they saw what they wanted, and they got this phony warrant. Now, Jeff Sessions could call up the Southern District right now, and he could say, I want that prosecution stopped. I want you to bring all those files back to that man. I want you to kiss his feet. He could do that. That's what Eric Holder did with that Black Panther action in...
That's why Donald Trump is so frustrated with Sessions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stabbed him in the back. He could have done the same thing to Joe Arpaio last year. He could have stopped that prosecution. Jeff Sessions was a U.S. attorney in the 80s. Jeff Sessions is dirty. But get to Rottenstein. Rod Rottenstein is so dirty. This is a pitiful excuse. He should be immediately fired. And Donald Trump should make Scott Pruitt, who was the AG for Oklahoma, very smart attorney, or even Pompeo of Harvard Law, number one in his class at the military at West Point, very smart attorney, went to Harvard. Either one of them, put him into Rod Rosen, appoint him under that federal Reform Act 1998. They've already been confirmed by the Senate.
Right.
Rod Rosenstein has got to go, Jimmy.
Well, and obviously Trump could file. Well, thank you. Always appreciate your phone call, Jack. I'll let you run with this. I mean, Trump can easily.
Yeah, actually, I had a good conversation with Rob Wassinger last week, who's a former Trump official from the administration and the campaign senior advisor, and he told me flat out that everyone he's talked to says the president is really looking at firing Rosenstein. He thinks this is the guy who's, because remember, Rosenstein is the reason that we have Mueller in the first place.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and correct. And I think a lot of people view the firing of Rosenstein as being a Trojan horse way of getting rid of Mueller.
Right.
Which it would be.
Because then instead of firing Mueller, you don't get into a Saturday Night Massacre situation like with Archibald Cox and Nixon. You actually put someone in there who's going to actually put some structure and some parameters on the Mueller investigation instead of writing these secret memos that we find out about months later that just ever expand the probe and ever keep moving the goalposts further and further. We don't even talk about Russia collusion anymore. Now it's about payments to Stormy Daniels and Access Hollywood and I don't even know what.
Well, look, this is a question I had for Roger Stone, but time ran out. Why is Sessions still there, in your opinion? Why can't Trump? I mean, Sessions is, in my estimation, he's more detrimental than anything to this administration.
So getting rid of Jeff Sessions would require, and Rosenstein too, would require another Senate confirmation process.
Right.
And we would have to have an attorney general who was set up that would be able to be confirmed by the Senate. And don't forget, because Sessions is himself a prior senator, there's that club of the Senate kind of mentality where senators would take it as a slight against one of their own.
I think Trump is just very confused with what's going on over at the Department of Justice. He's like, hold on a second. You look at Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder. I thought there was a different relationship that went on here. I thought the whole purpose of the DOJ was to be at the beck and call of the executive branch and to have my back.
Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, yeah. Well, any Democrat.
Yeah.
Right.
That is Jack Posobiec along with Tyrone Keys. Congressman Andy Harris joins us on the other side. It is 7:37. You're listening to the Jimmy Mathis Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM.